But this is item 2, 7820 Wisconsin Avenue. For the record, this item is being reviewed. We sent out a memo last week that briefly outlines the history of this project. I think many people in the room understand this project does have a lot of history, but for the specifics of this meeting today, this is the first type of assembly of properties that the DAC will be reviewing, and we're going to be focusing truly on the design, not so much the technical components of the project. And so one thing I do want to stress, which wasn't clearly outlined in the memo, is that even though this is a concept plan, this is going to be coming in under our quote unquote speech and market initiative. So it's going to be a compressed review. Typically when the DAC reviews projects, you see it at the sketch plan stage and then the site plan. But in this case, actually, we'll be seeing the sketch and site together. So this meeting is really important to lay out the groundwork of comments where you would perhaps be more reviewing it as a sketch plan. So I just wanted to make that clear before the applicant gets into the presentation today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over.
Great. Before we begin, I think we want to share one exhibit up on the screen.
I don't think Brian's hearing. He hasn't responded.
Brian, can you hear us?
No, we can't.
Oh, he can't hear.
I can hear you. It's just that Microsoft products do not work well, so it's hard for me to turn the microphone on and off. Sorry.
No, I'm just glad you can hear.
I'm joining the meeting.
Oh.
You guys are making me hungry. Clearly, I made a mistake by not coming in today.
Did. I can describe it for you in great detail.
Yeah. If I didn't have other things on my plate at the moment, I certainly would be there, but sorry about that, folks. And I do want to thank the board for the flowers that were sent in memory of my mom. Thank you all.
I think we're getting close. Great. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Phil Hummel of Stockbridge, our firm's land use counsel for the applicant. Here with me is also Brandon Wright, managing director with Crescent Communities, Cliver Saroff and Scott Gexy of Design Collective, and Ian Duke of VICA, who is attending virtually. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. As Grace noted in her introduction, there is a long history of this project going back 5 years. In fact, a version of this project was presented at the third ever DAP meeting back in 2017. That was a sketch plan for the northern properties that you see in this green outline. That was 7820 Wisconsin Avenue and 7815 Woodmont Avenue, pardon me. And one issue that was discussed at that meeting was that site's relationship to the parcels to the south, which you see there as 7810 Wisconsin Avenue and 7800 Wisconsin Avenue. And that specific issue was how the development to the north would interact with the development to the south, whether it be used as a park space or redeveloped, because at that time those two properties were owned by a private owner. So this uncertainty delayed the processing of the sketch plan for a long period of time. In fact, for the next 5 years, the owners of the properties to the north diligently cooperated with the director of the planning department, Gwen Wright, the director of the Parks Department, Mike Riley, as well as the planning board chair to help bring resolution to this issue about those two properties to the south. And during this time, this 5-year period, the applicant filed the sketch plan in 2017 and the preliminary plan in 2021. And MNC PPC acquired from a private owner the 7800 and 7810 Wisconsin properties in 2020 and 2021. And finally, after considerable discussions, the planning department and the Parks Department leadership determined that the Veterans Park Civic Green, which is described in the design guidelines and the sector plan, would not be located on this block, or a privately owned substitute also would not be located on this block, and let the applicant know of this decision, which then therefore put this issue to rest and allow the development to proceed. MNC PPC is now in the process of selling 7800 and 7810 Wisconsin Avenue to the applicant, which allows them to be included in the development application. MNC PPC has consented to that. So now the entire project comprises what you see all outlined in green: 7800, 7810, 7820 Wisconsin Avenue, and 7815 Woodmont Avenue to the west. The applicant believes that this new consolidated site allows for an innovative, dynamic, and iconic project that will enhance the public realm in this part of the Wisconsin Avenue corridor. And with that brief introduction, I'll turn it over to Brandon Wright.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Brandon Wright. I work for Crescent Communities. We are a national multifamily and commercial developer based out of Charlotte. I'm the Mid-Atlantic region head and actually work in downtown Bethesda. So I'm local and work just down the street from this property. Couldn't be more excited at the opportunity to deliver a best-in-class property here at this phenomenal location, and just want to thank everybody for their time and attention today as we work through the process. So with that, I'll turn it over to Fiverr to move forward.
No.
Should work.
No, we haven't.
The same problem in the 11.
Should we try this one over here?
They all should be
One of these
working.
has to work, right?
I don't think that worked either.
Well, there's 25%. I think we should be able to get through it.
This long enough?
Guess we'll be going quick.
If not, I'll go stand over by the wall. It's fine. It's fine. Come on, sitting back. Thank you so much, Brandon, for the introduction. Some of you are familiar with this site, some of you may not be. But just to give everyone a little bit of their location bearings, we're about a quarter mile north of the Bethesda Metro, bordered on the east side by the Wisconsin corridor, to the north at Fairmont Avenue, the south, Norfolk, and on the west side, Woodmont Ave. As we zoom in on the site, some kind of immediate context that's fairly relevant is the Veterans Park on the right side, number 1. Obviously, number 3 to the south, which is the new 300-foot tall Marriott headquarters. Number 5, which is currently the 2 properties on the southwest end of our site. There's a 4-story condo building there, as well as 2 stories of retail that are existing. And then on the northern end, number 6, which is the Fairmont Plaza, which are it's a 100-foot tall condo building that will remain. I highlighted number 2, which is kind of the heart of energy right here along Woodmont Avenue that spills out onto Veterans Plaza, the Starbucks there, which is only a 2-story building, but It reinforces Woodmont as a very active retail environment. And I wanted to jump into the ground floor plan really quick before we got into any of the massing development of the building, just because how this building meets the ground is going to be so dynamic and impactful for this area. Obviously, the northwest at Woodmont and Fairmont corner there, we're dedicating to retail, hopefully a restaurant there to really continue that activation north of Woodmont. And also the southeast, where you can see we've set back the building about 35 feet, which we'll get into later, but really looking to create a retail plaza and node of energy there that activates the corner of Wisconsin and Norfolk. The main lobby entrance for the multifamily building, we've located mid-block on Wisconsin. And the idea here is that there's a embedded amenity program that Crescent brings with them. That's a coffee shop concept that we're going to be locating on the northeast corner that's open to the public, but it's part of the building amenity. But that will really activate the ground plane at all corners of the building where they meet the street. The other thing to note here is how we've consolidated the loading access to the currently 5-story below grade concealed garage. The loading and the trash are all allocated to kind of one curb cut along Fairmount. We're utilizing the current curb cut that's existing there to minimize the vehicular and pedestrian conflict at the street level. Along Wisconsin, there is one curb cut that we are filling in. So to develop a vision for the project, we really wanted to look back at the history of Bethesda's roots, which was a node along a Native American ridgeline trail between the Potomac River to the west here and Rock Creek to the east. And it eventually became a ridgeline trade route connecting the communities to the Port of Georgetown. And the vision for the project really evolved to recall Bethesda's lineage as a node of energy and vibrancy cascading down to the surrounding communities. And the conceptual design approach to the building really looked to manifest this vision into the built environment while simultaneously embodying the tenets of ecology, equity, and economy to promote nature-centric living. And we wanted to really capitalize on the opportunity to harness the energy of this building's height and draw that down to the urban realm and letting it spill across the streetscapes, creating an energized community node that's responsive to and reflective of the natural landscape. So this is kind of a bulk massing build out of the by right. There's 290 feet allowed by the overlay on the north end of the site, which we are increasing to 314 by 314 feet by adding 24 feet through the MPDU density calcs. And the southern end of the site, which was limited at 225, we are looking to increase to 249 by adding 24 feet. This project's going to be incorporating 25% moderately priced oil units into the program. The rest of the red text you see is kind of highlighting the existing building heights. The 300 feet to the south at the new Marriott headquarters, the 100-foot condo building to the north, and the new 200-foot tall residential tower to the north. The east side of Wisconsin is a little bit lower, that scales down to the residential community. I believe it's zoned to 90 feet, and then scales back as you move east towards the single-story residences. So I wanted to kind of introduce that to talk about the bulk menu for reduction in bulk. We're going to be looking at limiting the tower floor plates, varying the tower heights on the site, modulating and articulating the facades, and limiting the apparent face of the broad sides of the building. So this is kind of a quick snapshot of some of these quick reductions in bulk from the by right massing. We reduced the tower floor plates and let the building kind of cascade purposefully down from north to south to maximize residential access to views and daylighting. And then reduce the tower floor plates by embracing a new landscape retail plaza along Norfolk and carving the massing back from the south property line to eventually reveal what you'll see is a series of programmatic spaces that connect down to that retail zone at the first 5 levels. The next move was kind of to limit the perceived bulk of the buildings, their frontage, by manipulating the massing into kind of thoughtful, elegant vertical proportions. And the next step was looking at, introducing a slipping of the volumes to give dynamism and hierarchy to the composition and varying the tower heights. A strong base tower and top massing is achieved through the significant setbacks. And the overall building composition is comprised of clean, simple volumes articulated with subtle plane changes to manipulate the massing into thoughtful, elegant proportions. Each of these setbacks provides the opportunity for seamless connection between internal amenity spaces and what we're envisioning as lushly planted outdoor amenity terraces. One thing that's not showing up on the diagram here is that this 2-story amenity space at level 4 and 5 would actually extend all the way to the north to serve as an active beacon as you're coming south on Wisconsin that would be, lit and active 24/7. Then taking a holistic approach to facade materials, the base tower and top are going to be comprised primarily of glazing and metal wall panels with mullion fins that respond to the solar orientation to mitigate heat gain. The 30-story masses facing east and west have vertical fins that provide solar shading from the harsh morning sun and afternoon sun, while enhancing the slender ends of the tallest masses. The vertical fins would continue above the building massing and provide solar shade, vertical fins would continue above the glazing at levels 4, 23, and the rooftop, provide a signature architecture of trellises where the building meets the sky. And then as this building energy cascades back down the facade, the movement is captured by a horizontal floating amenity volume and the retail plaza that cradled the building's energy and spread it horizontally back into the streetscape and surrounding communities. Then contrasting with these cascading vertical lines are continuous horizontal balconies that have been optimized to provide solar shading from the south and the east, as well as providing kind of true indoor-outdoor living that's unique to Bethesda downtown. We're also looking at and proposing on-site solar energy generation where the vertical trellis forms meet the sky to further express building performance to the public and residents alike. The building massing also embraces biophilic principles of wellness and natural connections. Inspired by a series of cascading waterfalls, the terrace landscapes design expresses the holistic approach to stormwater management, with rainwater collection descending from level 31 rooftop planters down to the level 23 pool deck, down through level 7 at the north, and level 4 bioretention planters, all the way down to the ground level plaza. So this first perspective I'm showing is from the southeast, looking north on Wisconsin. And you can start to see how the building cascades down to the primary amenity at level 4 right here, with seamless kind of inside-outside connection to lushly planted outdoor landscapes. the warm soffits, the wooden soffits, which are a little bit hard to see here, capture the underside of the primary massing and give a nod to the natural landscapes below. And then this is just a quick diagram highlighting setbacks and articulation for everyone to understand where it's falling in place. And this is on the east side of this Wisconsin, looking back to the west. We use the gaskets in the North Tower architecture to break down the massing to more elegant proportions. And this also allowed the southern mass to extend up and grab onto and encapsulate the elevator overruns, as well as the mechanical systems. And then that language extends vertically down to the ground plane to set up the building entry. To the south of that, along Wisconsin, you would have continuous retail with a 2-story floating amenity space above. And then as the structural columns start to splay moving through that fitness space, they were fully expressed at the level 5 amenity terrace, which is adjacent to the primary double height club space. We've got, once again, a diagram expressing the setbacks. Continuing to move around the project counterclockwise, this is a view from the northeast looking south down Wisconsin, where you start to get more of a taut skin due to its northern exposure and tight site constraints. You also start to understand the building as a kit of parts as it pinwheels around the building clockwise. We did incorporate balconies at the setbacks to add a little bit more texture and scale to this facade. And also larger setbacks at the upper level to create nice vegetative terraces. And, create a nice setback up there that we feel is going to be a dynamic addition to the Bethesda skyline. Once again, setback diagram from the northeast. And then looking from the northwest, looking south down Woodmont, the building meets the street in a similar manner to the east side, but the tower incorporates more projected linear balconies to protect the residents from strong southwest exposure. Once again, our setbacks. And this view took a little bit of creative license to see the entire building because we're somewhere inside the Starbucks to the southwest of Veterans Plaza. But you can start to see how the building base is responding to the datum of the adjacent existing context buildings. This view also shows our internal lot line conditions where we're setting the skin back 10 feet to allow for 45% vision glazing. But also how the linear balconies start to provide protection from the solar exposure and compositionally break down an otherwise taut lot line constrained facade. And once again, our setback diagram. And I wanted to use this slide to kind of talk about where we're pursuing an alternate setback treatment for the lot line conditions due to the constraint site conditions. I know we're due, for the downtown guidelines, we're looking for 22.5 feet tower separation from adjacent properties. But the site is just so constrained with a double loaded corridor. We're already at 67 feet 6. And it's already very tight. So we're looking to get 45% glazing, not create just a party wall condition here. At the south end of the site, highlighted in yellow, we are utilizing all those setbacks to get, I think, 34 feet of separation, just because we have some more width to play with here. And the other location we're pursuing an alternate setback treatment is along Fairmount Avenue. The building sets back 10 feet to create a strong base read at levels, I think 6, 5, and 6, but then bumps back out to the build-to line due to the limited property depth. And then once again, once you get up to level, I think 26, it starts to set back again to highlight the verticality of the tower. As we start to zoom in on the first 60 feet of the building at the southeast corner, and please note here that the landscape has not been fully developed yet. But the conceptual approach is that continuous retail and public art will activate the retail plaza, while expressive landscaping will ascend the building's first 5 levels. The view starts to show how the building massing has pulled back from the southeast corner to create an at-grade retail plaza for destination dining and public functions. On the west side of the plaza, we're currently envisioning a freestanding green wall to create a extension of the plaza greenery up through the building, as well as space for potentially projecting movies or public art. All of the internal amenity spaces are organized around this and engage with the plaza space. And then a quick view down at grade on that corner plaza, you can start to see how this greenery starts to terrace down through the building, engaging the public realm. The retail along Wisconsin, we've created a bit of an overhang to give a sense of enclosure and also warm it up and create some softness there. Retail is always a challenge in that they want as much glass and flexibility as possible. And some of the buildings just south of us feel a little bit tough in the urban environment, and that the glass just comes to the ground. There's no texture, there's no scale. So we're really trying to create a place or a node of energy that people are going to want to come to. Diving into facade materials at the base. We're envisioning a texture-rich precast material along the main plaza here on the south side that will serve as a nice contrast to the glass of the building up above, along with those warm wooden soffits that will give a sense of enclosure and texture. I think these are 2 projects in Chicago that utilize similar precast panels and textured metal wall panels and glazing that come to the ground. And this one, bottom right, is one of our recently completed multifamily projects down in DC. We're envisioning and accommodating for rich landscape terraces with substantial setbacks and planting depth to promote indoor-outdoor connections to reinforce our biophilic principles. And then these are precedents of kind of a clean curtain wall skin with multi-cap projections. They're actually the product that we're anticipating using on this project. And the bottom right shows the long linear balcony precedent for solar shading. And then as we move our way to the top of the building, we know that how this building meets the sky is going to be incredibly important here. We want something that's timeless and dynamic. Obviously, we probably want to have some lighting up there that respects dark skies initiatives. We're going to have some mechanical up there that we're going to have to accommodate for airflow. So tying that into the building design and some rhythm and texture is going to be very important. But this is kind of the start direction. And then quickly, I'll show a section looking north, cut through Woodmont and Wisconsin on the right, showing the below-grade garage, how the retail kind of ties into the fitness and the leasing sequence up through the building, up to our amenity sky deck at the 23rd level. And then one section cut north-south looking east that captures some of the retail as well as the fitness and residential amenities reaching to the north end of the project. This also shows the cascading of the building massing as it moves south, and also how we're encapsulating the mechanical penthouse with the architectural volumes project. And I think that's it. I have a package of appendices in the back, which have floor plans and things that can help foster conversation if we need it. But I turn it over to you guys.
Let me ask the big question. What happened at Veterans Park?
I can help with a quick bit. I'm Henry Fogle. I'm the Parks Development Coordinator now. And I mean, I think the kind of quick piece on it is after a couple of years working with this group and their consultants and our consultants and staff, we reached the decision and understanding that doing the full-fledged civic green build out of Veterans Park on this site wasn't going to be feasible in a way that worked to satisfy all of the goals and the vision for it. And so we're sort of reconfiguring, pursuing the full-fledged civic green in one of the other locations mentioned in the plan, closer to the existing. That being said, Parks is still very excited about the public open space over here. It's still really important. There's still a lot of important language and goals for this specific area. Forward to working with planning and that.
Can you elaborate a little bit on why it's not feasible?
Is it because of the two existing buildings, the Reds Trading and the condo? Or whatever?
There's a, I think it would take more time than we really have today to get into everything that we looked at to try and sort it out. We could probably work on a more elaborate briefing if you guys really want one for a different time, but I don't want to eat up your time for the rest.
I think it's pertinent to really our evaluation of the project, to be honest with you. I mean, to be honest with you, I'll be really candid. So I think the architecture is really great if you accept the properties as a theme, but the fact that Veterans Park is not part of this, which is an important place, a great hinge between Wisconsin and the Woodmont Triangle, is, you know, it's disappointing. I don't have any objections to the architecture as I see it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, there's a lot of great things about this project, but I think the elephant in the room is that space. And the master plan calls for 1/2 of an acre. And in my calculations, if you take out, you know, the adjacent property that's not owned by this development, you take that into consideration, you add that, you have to go about 80 to 90 feet deep from the curb at Norfolk, get a 1/2 acre. And right now it's about 40 feet, I think, from the curb to the face of the building. So it's clearly not even close to the size that the master plan calls out. And it shows, you know, they show this site as the preferred site. So that's a problem.
What's the future of the two short low buildings?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna, that's not
Even if
part of
That's not part, those are privately owned.
Right, but they're here to stay, right? So what's the relationship in terms of when you develop a ground plane? It would be really nice to connect this large, you know, civic space, not civic space, the plaza space into the triangle on the west as a continuing.
I think that makes sense. Thing is, as the private applicants, we have no control over the future of those two buildings, but we do think the design that we're proposing allows such a connection in the future. It doesn't preclude what you're describing.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at that at the site plan. I'm assuming you approached those
Yes.
just for an assemblage and it wasn't.
Yeah, it's not close to economically feasible.
Yeah, my understanding is that the Conley building on the corner, it's owned by the family, it's a family trust, and they're just not interested in selling right now.
We did design or thinking about the ground plane and that there's ultimate flexibility to the retailers to the north and the southeast. So that if in the future there possibly was some acquisition of those properties, that the building could engage with and open to that site if it ever did become a park. And what we were really trying to do by creating this 35 or 40-foot setback from the sidewalks is to create a meaningful connection from Wisconsin to any future park, if there could be a park in that location.
Can we go to the site plan?
Yep.
I think I noticed that when those two other parcels develop, it still allows for like a nice wide sidewalk connection from the other side of Wisconsin. I think there's a park on the other side of Wisconsin that can draw down through the Veterans Plaza. Yes.
The next block. It's a block.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a park down on Cheltenham. One.
Yeah, because we were reviewing another project that was right next to that.
I think this is an urban tree corridor, this.
Yeah.
So that they have double row of trees down their development. I think that's what was supposed to be envisioned for the street.
And it looks, to me, looks like that could be achievable if that other building on the corner redevelops one day.
Really, the interior corridor spaces have been relegated to this inside corner so that you could have kind of a stream connection here back out if that ever did occur in the future. The current interim condition, when we previously met with staff, our building was actually projecting out as a 5-story volume out to the streetscape here. And we've pulled that back to allow for a stronger connection there. We're obviously going to have a long-term party wall condition that we're looking at there. So that's where we were looking at some temporary structure that could serve as a green wall that could possibly be taken down in the future if there is that ability to connect.
So just to piggyback off what Fiverr said on, our site, we are set back continuously along our Norfolk Avenue frontage again to allow in the future, if it were to happen, that connection, that east-west connection from Wisconsin to Veterans Park.
Could you just
But
specify
it wouldn't be a half acre.
where the 35 feet is being taken from? Because I heard two different things, the curb or the sidewalk, and I think that has some relevance to the discussion here.
I'm pretty sure it's from the sidewalk.
To the back of the sidewalk?
Yeah.
So from the curb, it's conceivably around 50 or so feet.
Yeah. Scott, I don't know if you have the ability to check that dimension there.
It's about 40.
Yeah, it looked like Norfolk is how wide curb to curb, 48
48 feet.
feet. It looked to be about the same dimension, at least in the first floor plan drawing as Norfolk. So it's kind of a assumption, but I think it's around 40 from the curb to the building.
I would point out that that corner building is still the problem, no matter which way you go. If you consolidated enough to get the part of the park that's supposed to be on your property, that's fine. But if you can't get the corner parcel, then it's just like where we are today. If that corner parcel ever redevelops or somebody deep pockets buys it to make it a park, then I think, in my humble opinion, the 48-foot linear component leading to what would be a future park satisfies what we're trying to do or what was originally trying to do. So I think ruining a terrific project on a maybe, acquisition, I think the people who made the decision to go this way actually made a good decision. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I want to echo what George just said. I think that given the nature of the two existing buildings to the west, that this is making a valiant effort. Fiverr, I think you presented a fantastic building. Can't wait to see it develop further. You mentioned early on that the landscaping was preliminary, a kind of placeholder. So maybe the piece that's labeled retail plaza, maybe that, first of all, maybe that name retail plaza might be rethought. And then the landscaping character might have an inevitability to it that suggests the connection to the west. That is, I don't know what that means. I'm just sort of imagining this as a chess game that's played over time, and this is an opening move, and that it ought to make it clear that whatever happens in the next move, that there is that potential of the connection through the existing building on the west side of the site. Right now, it's a little generic, and I think maybe even the title retail plaza perhaps doesn't capture the potential gravitas of something that's called the Veterans Park. So maybe you guys might want to think about the name of that, and it might even pick up on some of the theme of veterans and whatnot.
Very good idea.
Comment. Thank you, Brian.
And the recommendation is for a civic green, which has more of a green design to it. And one of the defining features of a civic green is a multi-purpose flexible use lawn space. So as you all, consider what that landscaping looks like, those might be things that you can start to think of as opposed to a much more hardscape retail plaza. And that will tie in well with your biophilic approach to the landscape and the design of the building.
And it is a canopy corridor, so I think you have to understand what that means for the street.
It started to show in the rendering, 3D rendering at the corner that you have a lawn space. But I'm not sure. I know that you guys still developing the site plan and the ground plane, but it looks like you have the corner patch of lawn space, but maybe reconfigure that to see a way to include a flexible green space there.
Could the board also, the panel also provide some direction on what you see the sort of higher use of this space to be? Should it be a place of congregation, or should it be more of a connective space? I think some direction from you all would be helpful to hear on that aspect as well.
Well, again, I think the sector plan calls for 3 civic greens. And we're certainly not greens that I'm seeing in these plans. And, speaking not as the architect, but as the Bethesda area representative, a great deal of disappointment that Veterans Park is not materializing. I'm just being candid. Again, I think the architecture, as is defined, is really good. But the issue really is the park's not there, the civic green's not there.
It may be somewhere else in the future. I mean, the design guidelines did anticipate a number of options.
Well,
And it also stated that the location would be worked through park acquisition process through the development review process, and that's exactly what took place here.
fair enough, but again, if you really look at what the value of it having here is the connection of Wisconsin Avenue into the Woodlawn Triangle.
And we think that this design does accommodate what's described.
I think regardless of whatever the conversations and agreements that were made, Parks Planning still doesn't feel it. It does feel, it may not that way. It does not have to have a capital P park, but I think it's not there yet. And that's our.
Is there some way to rethink that sidewalk that is going along Norfolk? Right now, that sidewalk is really thought of as edge. What if the sidewalk was thought of as center? What if it sort of distinguished itself materially from the sidewalk on Wisconsin? It sort of drove a kind of visual line from Wisconsin back towards Veterans Park. And it was, and then the panel, the planting between Wisconsin, between Norfolk and the sidewalk, and then the treatment of the plaza between the sidewalk and the building could play some kind of game back and forth to create that sense of center. And this might also involve the sidewalk, at least on the part of the site where you control it, might have that double canopy of trees. It might create an LA that starts to drive this line further back and creating this kind of inevitability of a connector or even a kind of node that is on this kind of connector line that brings you ultimately to the destination of Veterans Park.
I think that's right on, Brian. I think that's one idea. The other thing is I think this very long protruding canopy also makes this space look essentially private.
Yes.
And I think that is a problem to it as well. So the current design of the sidewalk, the current design of the canopy are all doing elements that make it look like it's private, or it's not the wide open connection getting you from Wisconsin back to Veterans Park. Plus the size is an issue.
I guess I had a question tying into Brian's remark. I think that's a really interesting idea. And I know that Norfolk is currently, it's classified as a shared street. So it's really, a public connection possibly to this plaza. And I was wondering, I know it's fairly stringent in the streetscape design guidelines for, it's very prescriptive as to how that streetscape needs to lay out. And I'm wondering if there's any flexibility in letting the landscape design kind of dictate from the back of curb back to create a stronger connection there.
If I could jump in just for 1 second, the master plan does call for Norfolk to be issued, but as we've been reviewing it, it does not look as though in this particular area between Wisconsin, the shared street would be as realized the way that it will be farther west. So I don't know if necessarily that is something that from behind curb you should really be.
With the exception, I would say, of the double row of trees.
The double row of trees, the canopy corridor is still a very important piece here, and also separated.
Along Northwood?
Which you should take a look at the project, the 4725 Hellingham to, I guess, the east that incorporated all of that.
I've been mulling while we've been talking about the character of the space. Somebody asked a question a little while ago. As it's pictured here, I assume there's outdoor dining and things going on that relate to the retail in the corner. Is that true?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so it's being used as private space to a certain degree. It depends on how open it can be. And I'm thinking about as a not only a resident, but a daytime liver in this area, whether I would prefer to see what probably is mostly empty park space on that corner, or seeing it developed in something that actually is an amenity as far as doing things for the community. And the heartstrings are to make it a park that's public only and don't intrude on it except when you need to. On the other hand, I think the concept that you're showing is a far better amenity for the community. Parks are a difficult thing. Most of them are not used unless there's something special going on, like a interactive fountain, or they're used, but they're not used all the time. And so I'm not answering your question. I apologize, but I'm very sympathetic with this approach as opposed to a partially completed park. Maybe in the future, the character of it could change as the building on the corner disappears. And that's not a big deal to redo a public space. So I, as usual, I'm on the other side here, but I think the way you've developed it is actually very good, very solid. I think that Brian's ideas are great. It's not unusual in a healthy urban environment to have pedestrian linkages in and out, become squeezed and become bigger. I don't think that's something that is a terrible thing. And I think considering that there was a valiant effort to consolidate this, it's already delayed the project 5 years. I certainly, from an architectural standpoint, not a community, I would really like to see this project go through. And by the way, I have a couple more minutes. The presentation was excellent. The design is the testing is working. Materiality, I think, is also working extremely well. I think the passive solar projections are pretty intriguing to me. I was just in a building for the first time in 35 years, and I did 35 years ago, where each facade was different in panels on the east and west. North was flush and south had an overhang. And it was fun to go in and see it and talk to the people who are in there, and it's actually working. So who knows?
Why is it qualifying for the seat criteria? I didn't quite understand that.
So they are providing 25% MPDUs. And so for certain projects that are implementing a countywide or priority, such as affordable housing, can come under the speed to market initiative. So essentially the sketch, preliminary, and site plan will be reviewed all within the same concurrent 180 day, hopefully.
And then just based on current unit numbers, that actually equals over 100 MPDUs. So it's a significant number.
So in the next round, the sketch and site will be presented, or it will be a site plan level of presentation?
It will be a combined sketch and site plan. So the next time the DAP sees it, it will be at like a site plan level review. And I mean, as many times as it takes in front of the DAP to come to a decision on points, that will be. I imagine timeline relatively soon.
Yes, that's our understanding. So we have the concept plan in. We have DRC scheduled in about a week. And then depending what we get back, yeah, we're looking to turn it around quickly.
So I think, I don't think we're gonna solve this problem or this issue, but I think it is the elephant in the room, clearly. And it's something that needs to be addressed because I think it is supposed to not only a corridor, urban corridor street, but it's supposed to have a very public space here. And so how do you make it the best and widest public space, I think, is an issue. I had a couple other questions. Just so we make sure that we're addressing everything. The tower separation, I think, is another issue. And I understand, this one shows very well what you're doing towards the east, and I think that's appropriate. Towards the north, what do you do if these property to come in and decide to build out their site? They could go up to 250 feet, I think. And so they will have, apparently they could have a tower like right next to you, very close to you. So it wouldn't have tower separation. And if they essentially came in with the same idea that you came in, I don't know how much sides will be apart, but it will be 20 feet.
Well, practically speaking, I think if the width would continue along Norfolk, it really does constrain what can happen on the corner there.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm not sure, development wise, how practical.
I think that was the same issue we had, 5 years ago when we first saw this?
Yeah.
The whole block needs to redevelop together, but it's just not, it sounds like it's just not feasible. Did you guys also try to purchase those properties?
I don't know all of the details of it, but yeah, they have proven to be unavailable.
Could we go back to something that Paul said earlier, the projection of the canopies in slide 32? Fiverr, could we look at that just for 1 second? I'm kind of slowly processing what Paul said, and I think so. Right now, actually the eye level one, that's perfect. That's perfect. I love the idea of this cantilever that comes out of the building. But I'm wondering if the extent that it projects in the southerly direction is a little bit too aggressive and starts eating into the civic space. The other question is that right now it's a kind of episode, and I wonder if it were more of a thought of as a kind of element that helped to define the edge of the civic space, like a loggia, this one without columns, that might go almost all the way down to the party wall of the existing building to the west, creating something that is an edge to the urban plaza space, the civic plaza space, that is a transition between the interior of the building and the exterior. So if there's some way to create, instead of this thing popping out of that one element, that this is something that unifies the base and creates a kind of public loggia-like space. That would then start to give more unity and definition to that civic space. Again, I'm all about driving this axis so that the next player in this game knows that, damn it, I need to respect this axis coming through here. Even if there's building mass there, creating something that's very transparent at that point that allows the space to visually connect through. Because I mean, as we just said, the question of those two parcels or those two buildings to the west, it would be really nice if somebody were to step back and follow the setback of your facade. But given the development of that site, the footprint seems like minuscule. And so I kind of have a hard time believing that's going to happen in the future unless there's some way to, for the city to regulate that, for the county to regulate that. So what I'm just saying is that instead of the extreme projection from the building mass where the amenities, the fitness spaces and so forth, perhaps it pulls back a little bit, but it continues in a westerly direction and unifies that whole facade at the base. That would be my vote to try to get the Civic Plaza to have a continuity to it, a sense of oneness to it. See, I've already changed the plaza from retail to civic. How about that?
I think that's a great idea, Brian. And the other thing that's running through my mind is if that building on the corner does have to be there, which it probably will, it might be that the county could grant them an extra 20 or 30 feet in height for them to braze it up on pilotis or something that extended the plaza through the building, underneath the building in the future. I mean, I think that certainly is a possibility. It does make a visual connection.
Yep.
And it's not, I don't think it's too difficult for that kind of thing to happen.
The other question I had, and you could just address it. It's not necessarily that I'm against it, but the style of this building, I love the massing, I think, and I love what you're doing with the solar orientation and so on. But it looks very commercial, the building itself, in the glass skin. I mean, there's a lot of elements in this building that are very identical in a lot of ways to the Marriott right across the street. And just if you could just address why, kind of more of a corporate office kind of aesthetic, or what you're trying to do there, where this came from, if you could just explain it.
Well, we're going to be incorporating balconies, obviously, that are residential indoor-outdoor space, possibly some additional Juliet balconies to give texture and a little bit more richness and shadow line to the facades. I think the other big difference that this is going to have from the neighbor to the south is 24/7 activity. The things I really noticed about the Marriott's a very nice building. It's very well composed, but at nighttime, it's very dark. It's an office building, whereas this thing's going to come alive at night. The glass skin of this is going to have movement. It's going to have lighting. And I think it's going to kind of be the heart of this area in the evening, which is going to be really exciting. I think, Paul, going to your comment about the skin, we wanted something kind of timeless, not over the top. And I think it is an aesthetic decision. You're right. But I think it was we thought we could give scale and rhythm and expressing floor plates, doors, doing some things that make it not just a. Because we've all seen those. They're not great.
One thing I might add, just with respect to the renderings, it looks like glass curtain wall skin, but it is going to have windows. Balconies certainly give it a residential feel. There will be some louvers incorporated, things like exhaust ventilation for individual units. That'll start to break down the skin. I think and make it a little less commercial.
Well, and as the south-facing facade for this portion, I think there's an opportunity here to include some of those biophilic expressions on the facade very explicitly that pulls up some of the greenery from the space into the building. And if there is one place to carve any mass out of this without losing a lot of density of units, is probably around this amenity space. So this corner could be evaluated with an eye towards making sure that space really flows upwards, as opposed to having a very strong wall and then this deep projection. And I think the comment about having a loggia that connects it all is a great comment as well.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, I wonder to what extent, I'm looking at the renders of this and the way in which the operable windows are played down on the surface, and the reality is that it might be interesting to do a render that shows some of those open, some of those closed, that allows you to understand that skin is more modulated than it is right now. That whoever did the renders, obviously trying to make it be cool and slick, and the reality is that it would have some more punctuation to it, which I assume that the Marriott probably does not.
Are there balconies on that lower 4 or 5 floors? I can't quite define.
So what you're looking at here, you have the retail base and then a 2-story amenity
Right.
volume.
Right.
And then above that would be a
3-story.
deep terrace. And then there are balconies on the east side stacking up the project.
Not on the south. Right?
Not on the south. The south is actually getting pretty much full shade from the Marriott. So the corner units are getting balconies on the west side of the tower. And I think the internal slot.
I was just thinking the tower, I don't think needs to be articulated much more from a residential standpoint in my mind, but the lower 60, 80 feet is where you might
Add some richness.
add some richness to it, yeah. Because that's what I really love about this project is you finally are recognizing that what we perceive in the building is the first 6 or 8 floors. The rest of it disappears into the sky unless you're a mile away or a half mile away. And I think that with the greenery, stepping down everything, I mean, that's one of the things that really excites me about the project is how you've treated what is perceived by the pedestrian in the pedestrian realm.
We are considering some Romeo and Juliet on that lower.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
I think there was a concern that if it's a true full depth balcony, people might have their junk out there or something. But
Yeah, they know. It's true. I think there's plenty of opportunity to use those kinds of techniques to texturally interesting.
The last issue that I wanted to address, and we should address a little bit, is the setbacks and along the streets, because I know that the master plan and the guidelines talk about all of these. And I know what you suggested because you're in a constrained site. I think those setbacks need to be addressed. So if you're not doing them, it has to be more than just because your site's a little too small. And so, what are you doing to mitigate that issue? Because I think in the past, the board in particular has been very cognizant of these setbacks. And early on in this DAP, 5 years ago, we were maybe a little more lenient. But now, in the last 3 years even, it's become more of an issue because everybody was stepping back above the podium and then popping back out, and the board said, no more. No. And so now, it looks like you're basically suggesting that. And so I think that needs to be addressed in some way more than just that it's a constraint. So you're not going to do it.
On the other hand, their development above the first and second floor, the amenity space, et cetera, is so large and articulated that it certainly,
Well,
that's the kind of thing you use as
along Wisconsin, that setback is 2 stories. Everybody else previous did 1. And so you almost didn't perceive it at all. And so I think that is one idea. And it looks like on Wisconsin that the tower is actually set back a little bit from the podium. So I think that helps. But I think on the northern street, where there isn't any setback, I think that's going to be an issue. And it just needs to be addressed.
as in justified.
Justified.
And I think we acknowledged that as an issue, and that's what we brought up in the slide. And, I think we tried to address that at the corners of the buildings where we do continue that setback vertically all the way through the building to, highlight the verticality of the tower coming to the ground. Also adding texture with those balconies at the corners. So, trying to minimize that frontage.
And I think that the top, by the way, of these towers is very nice. I appreciate not only that you've made them unique, but that they have solar panels and that you're trying to generate some electricity and you're doing, there's a lot of things going on, but I think it helps since this will be the tallest tower in Bethesda. It needs to have a unique top because it's going to define the skyline in a lot of ways.
Which we
See,
try to
right
do
over
on
there,
Mary.
Right now, it's going to be right next to the Marriott. So it will be the defining element in the skyline, and I think that's very important. Glad you guys are looking at that.
I remember we tried to push the barrier to do more up there and did not succeed. So you take their place.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add to the plaza is, I don't know if you guys know the civic green space in Mosaic, Maryfield. It's looks comparable size within a private property and all detail around it.
Mhm.
It's very highly used, very activated. I don't know if you can, capture some ideas from there. It has some water feature, also have cafe area. It's a great space.
Where's that project located?
It's in Merrifield.
Oh, Maryfield.
Very
Perfect. It also has a jewel box
jewel box.
Is that what,
coffee retailer that kind of
Yes, that
Uh,
Angelica.
anchors
here.
that park, which
Yes.
unfortunately I don't, there's not gonna be enough space obviously to add.
Yeah, but it looks like it's a comparable dimension.
Definitely,
Scale.
we can definitely look.
Scale wise.
Yeah.
And that green feature in that space, I don't think it's extremely larger than what the space here is that you're trying to work with. And it does have the projection screen from the theater that they use. So there's some similarities there that.
We'll take a
Yes,
look.
and look into that.
Definitely take a look.
So if the panel is rounding up, we do have a member of the public in attendance. Amanda Farber, did you want to speak? See you still here. You're muted if you're trying to talk. Message her. In the meantime, I just want to make sure that I'm capturing the comments correctly because it's important moving forward, given the timeline process. I hear a lot of comments surrounding the importance of the open space design and how we want to ensure that it will read as public and connected through the corner property if and when that develops. And looking at the example that Shawjoy just said, perhaps addressing the canopy extension into that area as well. But in general, it seems like the material and the style of the building is appreciated by the panel members. But further information is necessary in areas where you're not necessarily fully compliant with the guidelines in terms of setbacks, step backs, and things like that. Is that a fair?
I think so.
Pick you up, bigger Veterans,
And what happened to that?
Veterans Park and.
Yeah.
What is the master plan idea associated with it? I mean, that's my big disappointment.
Is that in the category of other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, did you enjoy the play?
I'll give Amanda one last chance to speak. Are you there?
Did email me last night, so I do know.
She mentioned to me that you have to leave. Oh, I see. Okay, if she does provide us comments, I can forward it along to the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all very much.